Hey everyone, it's your blockchain beard guy, Chris Bennett, back again. Gonna do the third part in our hands-on with Hyperledger Composer series. Just a quick recap from last time. We got our car auction network set up. You can actually jump onto the Composer playground and set this one up yourself and follow along. We've created two members, Alice and Bob, both who have a balance of $10,000. We've created a vehicle owned by Alice, and we've created a listing for that vehicle with a reserve price of $5,000. And just to make this a little bit more interesting, we're going to create one more new participant. We'll create Carol Rogers. Let's say Carol has a balance of $5,000. All right. So Alice owns the car. We're going to have Bob and Carol bid on it. Now you can see everything I've been doing here is listed in all transactions. Like I mentioned in an earlier video, assets are not necessarily permanent. They usually have a fixed life cycle, but what lives on the blockchain forever is a record of all the transactions that affect those assets. And so I can see everything that I've done here. I created Carol. I can look back and see how I've created any of these participants or assets. But now let's go ahead and conduct some transactions. If you remember from last time, I mentioned we had two different kinds of transactions. We had offer, which while a vehicle is for sale, lets anybody place an offer on it. And then close bidding, which actually changes the status of the vehicle and assigns ownership to the highest bidder as long as the reserve price has been exceeded. So let's go ahead and place a couple offers on this vehicle. Remember, our reserve price is $5,000. We're going to have a bid of $4,500, so it's going to be below the reserve. This is going to be for vehicle listing 1, 2, 3, 4, I believe. Let me double check that. Oh, 9876. All right, so let's have a bid price $4,500. Vehicle listing 9876. And this is going to be Carol placing this bid. All right, so you can see we've got one bid. Let's go ahead and place another bid. This one's actually going to be above the reserve price. We'll have Bob bid $7,500. So Bob should win this vehicle once the auction is over. All right, so now we've got two different bids. You can see they're recorded here. They're also listed in our transaction record, so we can always come back and view these on the blockchain. Now let's go ahead and close bidding. And when we close bidding, before I do that, I want you to look at our vehicle. You see our vehicle is currently owned by Alice. And what we should see once we close the bidding is that that vehicle is going to get sold to the highest bidder who exceeded the reserve price, which would be Bob. So let's go ahead and submit. Got to update our vehicle listing. So we'll update that. We'll submit. Now we've closed our auction. You can see that the vehicle state has been updated to sold, from for sale to sold. And let's look at the vehicle itself. You can see now the vehicle is owned by Bob, not by Alice. So let's look at how all this is defined in the background now that you have an idea how this application actually works. If we come here to our Define tab, there are three files that we need to worry about that define how this solution works. First is our model file. And this is just really a specialized form of JavaScript. It's called Composer Markup Language. And this lets us define our assets, our transactions, and our participants. So you can see we have an asset called vehicle. We have an enumeration here for the different listing states. We have our vehicle listing, our second asset. Here we define an abstract participant that we use to define member and auctioneer. But this is where email, first name, last name come from. Members get a balance. Auctioneers add no additional properties. Then we have our two transactions. So if we place an offer, we need to specify the bid price, the listing that we're bidding on, and the member submitting the offer. And then once we close the bidding, we need to reference the listing that we're actually closing. So all we're doing here in our CTO or our models file is we are just modeling the different data types that we want to work with. When we get to our JavaScript file, and this is just plain old JavaScript, you see here's how we actually implement the two different transactions that we defined, offer and close bidding. So in close bidding, we're updating the state, and then we're transferring ownership of the vehicle to the highest bidder as long as the reserve price has been exceeded. In offer, we're simply creating a new offer and pushing that into our offer array, which gets reviewed when we close the bidding. But you'll see if you're familiar with JavaScript development, this is just basic JavaScript. It's nothing new you have to learn. And then what sits on top of all this is our ACL, or our permissions file. And this defines who is able to see what data. Understand that in Composer, everything by default is denied. Nobody can read or write any data. You have to go through and specify from everyone being denied the folks and the roles that you want to allow. Once all this is built, I can simply export it into a BNA file, which I can pull into my own Hyperledger environment and recreate and start building on top of. One thing I'll show you in the next video is how you can export this into your environment and then build a fully functional REST API around it. So it's very, very easy for your developers to start writing solutions on top of this. And I want to show you one more thing before we go, and that's how easy all this is to update. Let's say that we want to add a couple properties to our car. We want to have the color of the car represented. We also want to have, let's say, the style represented. So I can add these two properties to my models file, quickly deploy the changes, and watch what happens if I come back and create a new vehicle. You'll see now, in addition to VIN, I also get the color and the style. So it's very, very easy to change the definitions of your objects and the transactions that interact with, and change the properties of those assets or objects just by coming into your CTO file, making a few changes. And of course, if I wanted to do anything with that when I deal with my transactions, that's fine. Maybe there's a 10% surcharge for red vehicles or something like that. So that's it for Composer Playground. Like I said, anybody can jump online, set up this car auction network, follow along and do exactly what we did. In the next video, I'm going to show how you bring all this into a dev environment and set up a fully functional REST API that your developers can start coding against. So I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments or share your thoughts. It's always great having discussion about this. And until our next time, this is Chris Bennett, your blockchain beard guy. Hope you guys are having a great day.